Pete, let's just get into the takeaways here. And before I get into the takeaways, actually, let's talk about our boys at the Duffys. Let's start with Duffys because I want to get into this one, Pete. So my guy Tom Yamas was on Jimmy Kimmel. No, sorry, definitely wasn't on Jimmy Kimmel. That one's done. He was on Jimmy Fallon. I don't watch any of this crap, so I get him confused. So he was on Jimmy Fallon, and I saw on Instagram that Jimmy Fallon was interviewing him about his first show. And Tom Yamas, this is the anchor for the NBC Nightly News, one of the biggest journalist spots in America, hardcore Canes fan. I grew up with him and his brother going to Canes games in the cheap seats of the Orange Bowl. Still have a great relationship with him. I was actually just texting with him right now about potential game appearance here coming up soon. But anyways, so he was talking about the first show he did and how his parents had a watch party, and the watch party was at Duffy's Tavern. So I can't play the clip. It's on our Instagram because it's got copyright, but Tom gave a shout out to Duffy's Tavern on NBC. Jimmy Fallon gave a shout out to Duffy's Tavern. We're international right now with Duffy's Tavern, the number one, just home of the Hurricanes is the best way I can say it, man. Like our guy Wayne the Pain. I know Pete, this is your home away from home. Our guy Wayne the Pain always updating the signs. Let's see if he has an anti-Gator sign up yet. If not, he's got to get one for the bye week. But I mean, there you go. It is just rocking and rolling. They had watch parties for all the games.
I was at the Bills Dolphins watch party. It was a great scene out there.
Yeah, probably it felt like a funeral, but there you go. Now accepting credit cards. Yes, really. This place has been around for decades, and now finally accepting credit cards, new ownership, taking it to a whole nother level while keeping the classic feel. Duffy's Tavern, the home of the Hurricanes. All right, with that, let's get into our takeaways finally. So, Pete, my first takeaway, and this one is something that is not exactly a creative takeaway. I have heard it from multiple analysts. I heard it from Booger McFarland, heard it from Bud Elliott. Really, the whole Cover 3 podcast agreed. These are national guys, and certainly I agree. I watched a lot of college football this weekend, watched a lot of college football this year, probably more than I ever have because now I have more time with my job. So I've been trying to really, really, really study other teams, watch a lot of games in depth, not just out of the corner of our eyes like we did at the Lickin'. And I can confidently say to you, Pete, that through 4 games, injuries are going to happen, guys are going to emerge, all that. Through 4 games, we have the best combination of offensive line and defensive line in the country. Not Georgia, not Ohio State, certainly not Alabama. Just thinking of the traditional powers, Penn State. We, Miami Hurricanes, have the best combination of offensive line and defensive line in the country. And that typically leads to championships. Now, I'll go a step further. And I believe this one's, maybe more of a homer take, but I would argue it. I think we have not only the best combination of offensive line and defensive line in the country, I believe we have the best offensive line in the country, and I believe we have the best defensive line in the country. Both, number one. Offensive line, I don't think I need to explain it to you. Before the season, you had Pro Football Focus ranking UF above Miami's offensive line. We did a whole show just kind of laughing about it, how ridiculous that was. Now you see Miami continues to dominate. UF's offensive line had the single worst pass blocking grade ever by about 24 points. Ever, according to PFF. Ever. Not for UF, for teams. Ever. I think that speaks to, number one, the UF's offensive line was overrated, as we talked about on this show repeatedly. We said Austin Barber doesn't have the power to handle our defensive ends. Spoiler alert, he did not. The right tackle was no good. The interior guys were just average. Jake Slaughter, PFF overrated guy. So I think we saw that in this game. But it speaks to not only our offensive line being the best and superior to that unit, but also our defensive line making them look that bad, because they didn't look that bad against LSU. They didn't look that bad against other teams on their schedule. So that really, to me, cemented that right now, and look, Ohio State's going to have young guys develop, right? Texas, I don't think they're going to be there. I'm just trying to think of who would be. I thought Utah might have been the best offensive line in the country, if not Miami, but they got their butts whipped by Texas Tech. So those, even though they have 2 first-round tackles, a lot of experience inside. Texas Tech.
I will say, D, just I agree with what you're saying, but the procedural stuff really needs to be cleaned up.
Needs to be cleaned up.
And I think they will, but that completely goes against everything that they've built in that room right now. So I agree, but you have another game like that against Florida State on the road, they're going to be. I think it becomes, like I said, it's a mental thing at that point.
No doubt. I think you're exactly right. It's going to be on the road. It's going to be even harder. You don't want a yips, like a mental thing, like you said. I know that Cristobal specifically called out on the radio show this morning, Brockermeyer and Moten as two guys doing really, really well that aren't getting the notoriety. It was very clear to mention Brockermeyer, which I've heard too. I know you've heard that as well, separate from the snap issues. They're very, very happy with him. Deepwater saying OU's defensive line gets after pretty good too. Yeah, they're doing a great job. R. Mason Thomas, Broward County guy. Marvin Jones, another Broward County guy. So we always talk about the edge rush revolution here in South Florida, where South Florida's become the number one spot for edge rushers. I think those two, of course, Ruben Bain. They had Nick Benito at Oklahoma too, so that's someone that came up and is now one of the best in the NFL. So I would agree. OU's defensive line's good, but I think the combination of Bain and Messidor, because like for example, like an R. Mason Thomas, this guy's great against the pass. He can run stuff down from the backside, but you can run right at him. You cannot run it at Bain and Messidor, and they'll chase you down, and of course they'll get sacks. So I think that makes our defensive end certainly the best in the country. That one I feel great about. Defensive tackle, we'll see. There's some other good combinations, but we got some good guys. We got some guys playing at a high level, especially Moten and Blay. And again, I think if you look at where Notre Dame's offensive line was considered before the season, where UF's offensive line was considered before the season, and how one-sided those matchups were, I mean, how just almost embarrassingly bad those offensive lines looked at times against Miami's defensive line. I think you say Miami has the best defensive line in the country, and I certainly think we have the best offensive line in the country. No question that when you combine the two, we're number one. So that's my biggest takeaway. And look, that's a national championship takeaway because that's how you win national championships.
So we have, my number one takeaway, D, would be from a defensive standpoint, and this is something that you really were leading the discussion on here all offseason, was the impact of the physicality is raised in a big way. And right off that, obviously, Ruben Bain, Messidor, but Bain, the way he plays, just kind of setting the tone there on the line of scrimmage. But Jacoby Thomas and Mo Toure, right? People, I think, have been nitpicking a bit about Mo Toure sometimes in terms of the coverage. Maybe isn't where he's supposed to be. But you talk about the impact that those guys had on the game. I think Toure led the team in tackles. Jacoby Thomas was, let me see right here. Yeah, so Toure had 10 tackles, had that sack. Jacoby Thomas had that sack and then also had another half a tackle for loss, and just the mentality that they play with. And I think that alone has raised the energy levels on the defense in a major way. And it's something that it's hard to put you can't really say, hey, there's this physicality stat that shows how physical they were in the game. But watching the replay, seeing how these guys swarm, and again, it's like even Fowler said the other night, he's like, man, it was early in the game, but he's like, man, there's been a few huge hits tonight by Miami. Like it just, that aspect of it is hard to quantify, but these guys are big hitters.
I love the takeaway. I agree totally. Toure, I think of the one hit he had where he just knocked some dude back, just kind of ran through him up top. That really set the tone. Jacoby Thomas is always setting the tone. He's got great form for such a hard hitter, right? Wesley Basaint, you saw him hitting. I think our linebackers in general, big, long, fast, experience between Toure, Basaint, and Chase Smith. But yeah, you said there's an intangible quality when these guys play that physical. It sets the tone for the rest of the team. I think you add Bain and Messidor to it as well, just how hard they play. You saw some of the motor plays that Bain made, that Messidor made. So yeah, they're between the two defensive ends and the two Jacoby Thomas and Mo Toure, all of which I believe are older players, like much older. Like Messidor, I think Bain's young. Bain's a third-year junior, but Messidor is I want to say a sixth year out of high school, something like that, fifth year. He's an older guy. Toure, class of 2019. Jacoby Thomas is either 20 or 19. So these are older guys that have been around, that like to play with some violence, and they're physical. And, Sergio mentioning Marquise Lightfoot, who, by the way, plays kickoff. How many 5-star defensive ends play kickoff and make tackles? But I think with him, he's a high motor player to begin with, a physical player to begin with, despite his size. And then you see Messidor and those guys play like that, and he kind of just picks up from there. Austin Thomas saying Sturdivant got knocked out by OJ Frederic and Motoré. So yeah, man, it's pretty fun to watch. I really enjoyed watching those guys go to work, and like Herb Street said, it's like 14 guys on the field.
And I think, and I forgot to mention him, but Poyser too. I think Poyser started to get more comfortable now. He had a really nice open field tackle coming downhill. Maybe it was on one of the running backs or a tight end, but he was flying around out there. And I think he's, there was some questions about him after the Notre Dame game, had some bad tackling angles, but I think that's all part of him getting comfortable to the speed of the game, now consistently seeing it, week in, week out.
Yeah. No, I agree. And I would say my second takeaway, by the way, Poyser, before I can get to that, he almost knocked himself out on one of those, man.
Yeah, that's what Queen City G said here.
Yeah, he was flying in there. You could tell he's definitely picking up the pace, and I've always been a fan of his. But I just think my second takeaway is that in general, and this will be tested against Florida State and their running game, which is a different kind of running game with getting the speed out there on the perimeter and all the tricks and bells and whistles. But in terms of just straight physicality running, and this kind of expands on my point about the trenches, but I think there is no better team right now in football in terms of running and stopping the run. So again, somewhat of an extension of the first point, but you look at Florida. Florida has a defense that at least gives you a credible chance against the run. Right, they're an SEC team. They have size. They've been playing pretty well. Then you go against Miami's running game, and this really should have been a 220-yard rushing day for Miami. It got that miscall blew it. But you're talking about this was a dominant rushing performance, and obviously at the end, Miami rushed whenever they wanted. For Miami to be running the way they are, not only against Florida, but against Notre Dame, which is another team that you look at their rush defense, that's something that they're known for. That's something that they hang their hat on. That's certainly something that Marcus Freeman is trying to build his program around. And then when you think about Notre Dame, you think of a team that can stop the run and play physical defense. Miami ran on them as much as they needed to. On the flip side, Jeremiah Love right now is averaging like 125 yards per game between Texas A&M and Purdue. Against Miami, he did nothing. I mean, absolutely nothing. 33 yards, I believe. Jaden Baugh, we had the very animated discussions. I mean, look, I think Drew's probably somewhere in the middle. He's just solid. He's definitely a good back. Any team would take him. If he jumped in the portal, there'd be a lot of teams trying to spend money to get him. He'll probably be a pro. So those are pretty good indicators.
Wouldn't be surprised to see Miami interested.
He fits our system. He's a big guy. But at the same time, I didn't think he just provided a dynamic threat that was going to threaten us too much. And obviously only 40-something yards didn't really threaten Miami's run defense. So if Miami to this
nice
point,
touchdown run.
He did have a nice touchdown run. If Miami's been this dominant against those guys and against those defenses, the rest of the schedule, I don't see anyone that's going to stop Miami's running game unless they completely just sell out to do it and give Carson Beck free reign. And I really don't see anybody running consistently against Miami unless, and we'll see with Florida State in a couple weeks, you can just sort of out-scheme us and get us with big runs with some of your 4-4 type of ball carriers, which FSU has a couple of those. Louisville has a couple of those. That would be the way to do it. But in terms of just like straight, we're going to run the ball, I don't see anybody in Miami's schedule that is going to come even close to threatening Miami running the football.
I know you have another takeaway here, D, but real quick before we move on to that, New King got asked, I'm surprised Chase Smith only got 7 snaps. He played extremely well against USF. Why don't they trust him? I don't think it's a trust thing at all with him. I think sometimes with these rotations, it's first of all, the rotations are controlled by the position coaches. Corey Heatherman, as the defensive coordinator, is also the linebacker coach. And a lot of it's like series to series. Like, do guys need rest? Do guys, kind of like we were talking about with D-line, there wasn't a ton of rotation there. There's situational rotations where you bring in a Lightfoot who had a heck of a game. But if Heatherman's sitting there watching the linebackers and saying, hey, these guys are playing well, they're not tired. They obviously held up extremely well, except for that one drive that Florida ended up scoring on coming out of halftime, right? Then it's kind of like we talk about the flow of the game a lot. Within the flow of the game, he wasn't needed there. You had a different situation against USF where he was able to get some extended snaps there, and you see what he can do. But I didn't sit there and say, man, things would have been different on this drive if Chase Smith was in there necessarily. And I think that's kind of the point I'm getting at.
Yeah. And like I said, I think we were on the field a lot more. So we just played less players on defense. We were more on the field, more on offense in this game, just completely controlled the ball that way. So I just think we didn't have to rotate as much. FSU could be different depending on what pace they play. A team like SMU, that'll be different. USF was different. So we'll see how that goes. Shout out to baby Lagoon. Johnny Lagoon's baby 1-0 against the Florida Gators. So what's your number 2 takeaway?
That the issue at receiver that I'm a big fan of the receiver group, but I think part of Miami not necessarily testing deep. Yes, you have to give some credit to Florida's secondary for keeping a lot of stuff in front of them, but I just don't know that, Keelan Marion has the ability to be that deep threat, but the lack of speed on the outside, I think maybe gets exposed in a game like this where Florida has some athletes in the secondary. Not sure you're going to see, Florida State's got a night. We saw what Florida State did last year, different group, but we saw Florida State limit Miami's explosives with completely different situations. But I'm saying you see where things kind of get exposed a bit more when you play a team with, and look, Notre Dame had obviously some of the top secondary guys in the country there, but I think that unfortunately was something that really came to light for me in this one, D.
Yeah, I think there's some truth to that we just need to get more explosive, and I'll talk about that in a second in the context of the bye week. But
yes, it was raining, and Beck didn't look comfortable and all that. But
that's what CL Smooth was saying, and I was going to say the same thing. It was raining. I don't think that that Beck threw the ball very well. I think sometimes the wet ball is tough to throw. He's not the biggest handed guy, and a lot of times the guys that are good with the wet ball are guys with those stronger hands that can just kind of grip it and rip it, which he does not have those huge mitts. I mean, not that it's a weakness, but it's not like someone who is just as good in the bad conditions as the good ones. He's someone that like most quarterbacks, he's better in good conditions. So I thought the ball was coming out a little light. The placement wasn't perfect. Again, I attribute a lot to the wet ball. We'll see next week.
I guess my thing, D, and not to cut you off, is like, even against Notre Dame, a lot of this stuff was contested catches, right? It was guys making plays on the ball. Obviously, Malachi Tony, his touchdown was a nice one. That was a little bit. It wasn't necessarily a deep shot, but you're within the 40 there. I think that I'm very excited about where this receiver group is headed, but they're lacking that. And look, even if JoJo starts playing, I don't know that JoJo's that guy to be the speed deep threat either. I think JoJo could be a playmaker within this offense and could help this offense in terms of some of the stuff downfield. But I still don't see JoJo as a guy who's taking the top off of defense consistently.
Yeah, Youssef mentioned also they wanted to make us patient there with the running game, which we were. We ran for almost 200 yards, playing 2 high safeties. So there's a lot going on. I think, Pete, I don't think what you're saying is wrong. I do think if you're an opposing team playing Miami, the game plan is going to be based on what we've seen with UF and Notre Dame. You have good corners and force Miami's receivers to beat good man coverage. I think that's the game plan against Miami. If you're playing Miami, just because you don't necessarily have somebody you fear is just going to murder you down the field if you play too tight. Marion has speed. Again, I think in better conditions, we'll see more of that. He's just missed on a couple. One of them is he got tackled by Notre Dame. JoJo, I think, will help in that. We'll talk about that here in a second because there's a lot of questions on JoJo I want to get to. But yeah, Pete, I don't think you're wrong on that. Josh Moore is someone that could get more up to speed. But Miami, if you're asking me what's the weakness in Miami's offense right now, I would say the explosive passing game. And that's something that Beck is capable of. Certainly, the offensive line is going to give him enough time to do that. You are going to see eventually safeties creep up because the running game is just too dominant. It's going to depend week to week on matchups, but some teams are just going to have to devote extra to stopping this running game. I think certainly in the ACC, I wouldn't do what UF did and force Miami to be patient. I think Miami will bludgeon teams in the ACC if they play too deep. So there will be opportunities, and we'll see how that goes. But there's still a lot of time, obviously, in the season.
And then I guess I'll just throw this on top of there too, as a takeaway / observation in terms of the tight end. I don't think we can say that we've been, Bauman hasn't been too great. I'm not giving up on that one just yet. I think what you saw from Elijah Lofton is what you can expect from him. Right. 4-6 touches a game. Get him the ball on the flat. You saw his third down catch, right? Awesome catch. But get him the ball to the outside, 3, 4, 5 yards, and let him get upfield with it. I don't see him as that vertical threat D. I know what people maybe have in their head expectation wise for him, but that role that you saw him used in this week is much like it aligns with his skill set. And it's not to down like what he is. Like you saw his ability with the ball in his hands, but I think that's where he's going to scare a defense, because eventually you start hitting that consistently enough, they're going to have to start creeping up on it a little bit. And I think it opens things up down the field.
Yeah, no, I think that's a good point. Miami's not going to have a tight end like Arroyo as far as the downfield threat. That's just not going to happen from a speed standpoint. I think Lofton, one of my favorite players, everybody knows. I've watched him very close, both in practice and in games. He is, 60% in terms of what he can be as far as being explosive and quick. He was effective in this game, which shows you how much he still has. I think the confidence is he'll get quicker and more explosive just by getting more confident. And then, of course, there's the physical aspect, which the bye week will help. But I think there's a lot more with him. He could be one of our best players on offense by far.
I would be interested to see. We saw Luka Gilbert play a little bit. Maybe he gets some more snaps here. Brock Schott, who looked good against Bethune in his couple touches. I think with Brock, just being honest here, I think there was some drop stuff in camp with him. They're super excited about his potential long term. You saw the physicality and speed, but again, there's a time and place to work these guys in. Were they going to play him and give him targets against a Florida in that moment? Not sure it was the right time. But as you get into ACC play here, we keep saying you've gotten through these first 4 now. You know what you've got for the most part. This bye week, and I know you said we'll talk about it more, but you can start to integrate some more things. Luka Gilbert, I think, is in line to get hopefully some more snaps here.
Yep, he played one of the snaps. I don't know what the snap count is, but Church and Breeze posted it on CanesInSight, so I could probably just pull it up. Give me a second. But I know I saw
on the goal line. The goal line,
he played. I saw him in that scenario playing on the goal line, so he's definitely playing. Elijah Lofton will get healthy. Bauman, he's the one that really needs to step up. I think not playing in spring, just his timing's off a little bit with Beck. They're not on the same page. So
yeah, I mean, look, Beck didn't play with anyone in spring though, so I don't know if that's
right. But Bauman didn't play in spring at all. So like they're both coming together at the same time. Like I don't know, it's just his timing is off. So I don't know. It like blocking when you're supposed to be running a route, not finding the ball. These are things that some of it is no one's Arroyo from a physical standpoint on this team. I mean, it's just not like that part's not going to happen no matter what you do. But I do think there's more to Bauman than we've seen. I know you liked him a lot coming out of camp. You had heard good things. I'd seen him do some stuff too. But I think you can get better play from Bauman from just a communication timing standpoint. And then I think definitely you can get better play from Lofton as he gets healthier. I know that one for sure. So we'll see. But Luka Gilbert's going to have a chance here, especially like you said, over the course of the year as you get into some of these games, which on paper, Miami's going to be double-digit favorites.
I with Lofton D, I'm a huge fan of his. I want people to try to understand what the skill set is. You're not going to see it like you keep talking about. You're not going to see him vertically destroying people the way that Arroyo was, like, because again, like we talk about, it looks a certain way. He's a different body type. He's a different athlete. He's unique in his own way. He can do a lot of things with the ball in his hand. But when people talk about getting the tight end involved, yeah, you would love to see some more vertical stuff with some of these guys. But I don't know that's Lofton's skill set.
No, although I think he can do it. You saw against one of these blowout games, maybe it was Ball State. He had a long touchdown from memory, and then in Iowa State, remember that was the play where he was wide open down the seam, and then they held one of his arms, and he almost one-handed it.
I think he could be effective on some wheel routes.
Yeah, he's not Arroyo
against linebackers.
He's not Arroyo, but he can do some of that stuff. But yeah, I agree. that skill set, you're just not going to have it. The only guy at tight end that really has speed comparable to Arroyo would be Brock Schott. Brock Schott does have speed comparable to Arroyo, but there's some development still left with him. He's going to be a really good player for Miami, but I got a good take on the tight ends. So let me end this here on the takeaways with this one. And this is one I really believe in strong, and I know you believe in. We spent the offseason. We looked very closely at the portal, not just for Miami. We did videos on a lot of players, right, Pete? Portal breakdowns of different guys that didn't go to Miami. And really, to me, I thought that helped us understand college football at a much higher level if we hadn't done it. So that was a really very valuable exercise I'm learning now. But what I'm seeing is there were two teams, and maybe it's because we did this, Pete, in the offseason that we really had a feel for it. But the two teams, who do we always talk about all offseason, that these teams to us were overrated, that they had significant structural flaws, that they did not correct in the portal. They ignored the portal and thought they were going to do some internal development. They got gassed up by PFF. They got gassed up by kind of these fringe draft analysts. And there was a belief that Florida and Clemson, those two teams in particular, were going to break out. And we said, hold on. They were bad last year in certain respects. UF was 5-loss team, got destroyed by Miami brutally. Clemson, 90th against the run, lacked some toughness and some size. And they didn't run the ball that particularly well. And they lost their best running back. So all these things we said in the offseason, and then we pointed out the portal. These guys ranked below Sacramento State in the portal. They did nothing. Neither one. To me, that was a sign of tremendous hubris. And what do we see? UF, 3 losses. Coach is going to get fired. They're going to probably lose 10 games this year. They stink. Clemson, already 3 losses. And that was doing long press conferences. It's a mess. So I think what you see with those teams on one side, and look at the other side. Pete, who do we make the most videos on in the portal?
I was gonna say, who we loved is Indiana.
We'll say 2 teams. Who are the 2 teams? North Carolina too. Although we talked off.
That was for
a volume thing.
I don't know that was a true belief system there.
No, I mean we said they did a lot of transactions, but they just were getting mid guys. But who do we do the most videos on as far as impact guys? Texas Tech, Indiana, and I'll throw a third one in there that we did some very big videos on, Missouri. So Indiana, which had a dream season, they could have easily said, hey, we got the culture, Signetti, we got all this thing rolling. We brought back a lot of guys, which they did. They didn't lose a ton. They brought back a lot. We're just going to keep it rolling. What'd they do? They went and got Fernando Mendoza, who, Pete, we were talking about him before that or after that Auburn game this time last year, saying, man, it's been before this time, like over a year ago. We're saying, man,
the comments, the pushback on that was wild. What people were saying about him.
Oh, it's Cuban, Miami. You guys are biased, man. Wake up. You guys are don't know ball. He might be the number 1 pick of the draft. Legitimately. Watch that game against Illinois. Watch the throws he makes. Look at his size. Look how he moves.
Let me hold on a second. I just thought of something, D. 2 first overall picks for Columbus this year? Ooh. NBA and NFL? That would be that's in play.
Ooh, I hate to say it, but you're right.
That's a major play. If you get Cameron Boozer,
really play. That's pretty crazy.
That just hit me. I'm gonna start the propaganda on
you're
that Columbus people. Yeah,
but I mean, Pete, I don't think I'm speaking out of turn. We were the first ones on him. Mendoza, my thing with him was always when he got projected in the first round. I'm like, let's see how his physical improvement goes because he's a big guy. A lot of times, those guys have just extra leaps in him. He's a very hard worker. That leap has happened, and he to me looks like he might be the first overall pick of the draft. I mean, that's how good he looks. So
what about our boy D that we talked about at Ole Miss, Trinidad Chambliss?
Yeah, we did one.
He's looking good over there too.
That's why you got to study the portal, man. Like we're doing that again because studying all those portal transactions, you really get a feel for what's going on in the country. That's the lesson I've learned. But Mendoza, they had him. They had Hemby in the running back room. They had the tight end from Notre Dame. They added Coogan on the offensive line. They added defensive linemen.
Tight end Holden Stays.
Yep, that's it. Yeah. So they've added a ton. And then what happened? They look like a top 10 team in the country. You look at Missouri. We both loved Prabula. Said this guy can run, he can throw. He's got a lot more passing than people know from watching him do the Wildcat at Penn State. This guy actually can pass. He gets his own opportunity. He's going to be really good. Ahmad Hardy from Louisiana Monroe, one of the best running backs in the SEC right now. They added Coleman, the well-traveled Kevin Coleman, who at one point we thought was going to commit to Mario in Miami. He's a very good receiver for them. Damon Wilson. Missouri got the best pass rusher from Georgia. Like, they didn't get Georgia's four-string pass rusher. They got their best pass rusher. Just took him. So those teams are all doing extremely well. And of course, Texas Tech, right? Texas Tech, we did all the videos on them. They spent probably $5 million plus on their defensive line. And then that defensive line went and beat up Utah's offensive line.
Looks like it was worth every penny, D.
Every penny. I mean, Utah, I was saying before the show, or before the weekend, that the two best offensive lines were Miami and Utah. Utah has 2 first-round picks. They have a lot of experience on the interior, 2 first-round picks at tackle. Texas Tech worked them. So that is why you go into the portal. That is why the portal is important. That is why, like, just because FSU bombs the portal one year doesn't mean that you forget the portal. FSU bombed high school recruiting. That's the real problem. They only had one part of it, and the one part they screwed up. Portal is essential. Miami has 12 starters from the portal. Of the 10 high school guys, 6 are from South Florida. Bain, Moten, Mark Fletcher, Tony, Wesley Basaint, OJ Frederic. And then the other 4 are offensive linemen: Cooper, McCoy, Mawanoa, and then Markel Bell. So that seems to be the formula. Get the best guys from South Florida. Get some big monster offensive linemen from all around the country. That's your Jackson Cantwell this year, Ben Cogden. Again, load up in the portal. And what you have is what Nick Saban says, the most complete roster in the country right now, and some other teams that are really pushing up with a similar formula. So that, to me, is my third takeaway. Is my biggest one. The portal is essential, and teams that ignore it, write them off. They're going to suck.
Yeah, look, the opposing fan bases control they want about the portal, and hey, look, you're not developing guys and all that, but I'd rather be in the position you're in now and be developing guys plus adding quality from the portal. And D, you know what those monster offensive linemen and those monster recruits are eating when they're on campus? Speaking of the Columbus potential of 2 first overall picks, my boy at Lomello's Meat Market, fresh Wagyu beef delivered to your door nationwide. Promo code CIS10 gets you 10% off your order. Got the store on US 1 past Dayland, 9810 South Dixie Highway. You get the A5 American, Japanese, Australian Wagyu. You got the skirt steak. You got the Denver's, Wagyu ribeye, you name it. Tomahawk, you see the tomahawk here on the grill. Burgers, sausages, much more at Lomello's Meat Market. Check out lomellos.com.
Yeah, no, that's getting these guys big and strong, and you got to be big, strong. You also have to be healthy. And when you got injuries, you got to recover. And look, again, these are top-of-the-line millionaire athletes. If you consider yourself an athlete or just an active guy, an everyday guy, you know how hard it is to sit on the injured list with pain or with an injury. Maybe even try to hack your own rehab, get back early. But if compromising your movement and performance is not an option, you want to get back to full speed, call the experts at the University of Miami Sports Medicine Institute, whether it's those offensive linemen you see beating everybody up or just us moving around the house every day. The University of Miami Sports Medicine Institute is the trusted choice for those who demand excellence. Set an appointment today at U Health Sports.